Have you ever imagined saving a helpless child, only for that same child to become the only person standing between you and total ruin years later? 15 years ago, Ethan Carter was a struggling widowed father with barely enough money to feed his young son. One freezing evening, outside an old city transit terminal, he noticed a little girl trembling beneath a leaking shelter, hugging a torn backpack as strangers passed without a second glance. He offered her nothing extraordinary, just a warm meal, a dry coat, and a promise that she would never have to face another storm alone. 15 years later, that same man sat inside a packed federal courtroom, accused of stealing from the billion-dollar logistics company he had built from nothing. The media called him a fraud. His own board demanded his removal. Every piece of evidence pointed toward his guilt. Then, just as the judge prepared to sign the order that would destroy everything he had created, the courtroom doors slowly opened. A confident young attorney stepped inside, carrying a weathered leather case. No one recognized her at first, but Ethan did, because beneath the sharp suit stood the frightened little girl he had rescued all those years ago. And before the trial could continue, she calmly said, "Your Honor, before this court makes its decision, there's one document everyone has overlooked." The entire courtroom fell silent. No one knew that the next few minutes would expose a conspiracy worth hundreds of millions of dollars and change every life inside that courtroom forever. It all began on a cold, rain-soaked evening 15 years earlier, when Ethan finished another exhausting shift at the shipping docks, unaware that a single act of kindness was about to reshape his destiny forever. 15 years earlier, relentless rain hammered the streets of Baltimore as Ethan Carter dragged himself home after a long shift repairing cargo trucks at the harbor. His clothes smelled of diesel and seawater, and every muscle in his body begged for rest. Waiting for him at home was his 8-year-old son, Liam, who never slept until he heard his father's key turn in the lock. As Ethan passed the aging transit terminal, something made him stop. Beneath a cracked shelter sat a small girl, no older than 9. Her clothes were soaked, her sneakers were torn, and she held a faded backpack so tightly it looked like the only thing she had left. She wasn't crying. She simply watched people walk past, as if she'd already accepted that no one was coming. Instead of rushing over, Ethan kept a respectful distance. He gently asked if she was all right. After a long silence, she whispered her name, Ava. Ethan immediately contacted the authorities and requested child services, determined to do everything legally. While waiting, he bought her a hot drink, a simple winter jacket, and a sandwich from a nearby convenience store. He quietly placed them beside her without expecting thanks. The little girl stared at him for several seconds before asking one heartbreaking question. "If they take me away, will you still come back?" Those words struck Ethan harder than the freezing rain. In that moment, he realized this frightened child wasn't asking about tonight. She was asking whether anyone in the world would ever choose to stay. That single question would become the beginning of a bond that neither of them could have imagined, and eventually, the very reason powerful enemies would try to destroy everything Ethan had built. The weeks that followed were filled with interviews, background checks, and endless paperwork. Ethan never missed a single appointment, even when it meant sacrificing work hours he could barely afford to lose. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He simply refused to let a frightened child disappear back into uncertainty. Months later, the court officially approved Ava's adoption. As they stepped out of the courthouse, Ethan handed her a small brass house key attached to a worn blue keychain. He smiled gently and said, "This key isn't just for the front door. It's proof that you'll always have a place where someone is waiting for you." For the first time since they'd met, Ava smiled without fear. The years passed faster than anyone expected. During the day, Ethan repaired trucks at the harbor. At night, after Liam and Ava finished their homework, the three of them sat around an old kitchen table covered with maps, invoices, and shipping schedules. While others saw transportation as simple deliveries, Ethan noticed expensive mistakes everywhere: empty return trucks, delayed cargo, and warehouses operating far below capacity. Slowly, he began designing smarter ways to move freight. With borrowed money, countless sleepless nights, and 3 used trucks, he launched Carter Freight Solutions. Liam handled technology, while Ava eagerly learned contracts and business documents. Ethan constantly reminded them, "Never sign a paper until you've read every single line." Neither of them realized those simple words would one day become the most powerful lesson of their lives, and the key to exposing a carefully planned conspiracy. Chunk 4. Within 15 years, Carter Freight Solutions had transformed into one of the country's fastest-growing logistics companies. Modern distribution centers, refrigerated warehouses, and a private rail network stretched across several states. Financial experts valued the company at nearly $900 million. Yet Ethan Carter never changed. Every morning he still wore his old canvas work jacket, steel-toe boots, and shared lunch with mechanics and truck drivers instead of dining with executives. Employees admired him because he never forgot where he came from. But not everyone respected that humility. The company's board chairman, Victor Langford, believed Ethan was too old-fashioned to lead a corporation of that size. Secretly, he partnered with wealthy investor Catherine Blackwell, whose investment firm had wanted control of Carter Freight for years. Together, they designed a careful plan. Using forged financial records and manipulated company documents, they accused Ethan of secretly transferring company assets into a trust connected to his adopted daughter, Ava. Their goal wasn't justice. It was to freeze Ethan's voting rights, force him out as CEO, and buy the company for a fraction of its true value. Within days, television headlines branded Ethan a dishonest businessman. Investors panicked. Board members began turning against him. Even worse, the media twisted the story, claiming the little girl he had once rescued had become the reason behind his biggest betrayal. Then the court announced a hearing that would decide Ethan's future in just 72 hours. As panic spread through the company, everyone searched for one person who could save him. But Ava had completely disappeared. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Every major business channel questioned why Ava, the brilliant corporate attorney Ethan had proudly supported through law school, had vanished just when he needed her most. Her office said she was unavailable. Her apartment remained locked. Every phone call went unanswered. Rumors exploded overnight. Some claimed she had abandoned Ethan to protect her own career. Others whispered that Catherine Blackwell had offered her a fortune to stay away from the courtroom. Even several board members began believing the silence meant Ethan had truly done something wrong. Victor Langford wasted no time feeding those rumors to reporters. During interviews, he repeatedly suggested that if Ethan's own adopted daughter refused to defend him, the accusations must be true. Despite the growing pressure, Ethan refused to blame Ava. Late that evening, he quietly opened an old wooden drawer in his office and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a frightened little girl wearing an oversized winter coat beside a smiling young Liam on the night she first entered their home. Looking at the picture, Ethan whispered softly, "I never gave her a home expecting anything in return. Whatever choice she's made, I'll respect it." But Ethan didn't know the truth. Hundreds of miles away, Ava wasn't hiding. She was working through forgotten company archives, searching for a single missing document that everyone believed had been lost forever. When she finally unlocked an old storage cabinet, she discovered a sealed file bearing Ethan's original signature. The moment she opened it, she realized the entire case against him had been built on one enormous lie, and the evidence in her hands had the power to destroy everyone behind it. The federal courtroom was overflowing with reporters, investors, and employees. Every seat was occupied as Ethan Carter quietly took his place beside a temporary defense attorney. Across the room, Victor Langford sat confidently with a team of elite corporate lawyers, certain that victory was only minutes away. One by one, the prosecution displayed bank transfers, trust documents, and financial records on large courtroom screens. Finally, they enlarged Ethan's signature for everyone to see. To the public, it looked like undeniable proof. Victor's attorney confidently argued that Ethan had secretly diverted company assets into a trust connected to his adopted daughter, Ava, abusing his position for personal gain. When asked directly whether he had created a trust bearing Ava's name, Ethan answered honestly, "Yes." The courtroom erupted in whispers. News alerts instantly flashed across the country, making it appear as though Ethan had confessed. Even the judge's expression hardened. Then came the question that could end everything. Does the defense have any additional evidence? Silence filled the courtroom. Ethan's attorney lowered his head. The heavy courtroom doors remained closed. For a brief moment, it seemed the case was over. Then, the doors slowly opened. A young woman in a dark navy suit walked inside, carrying an aged leather portfolio. Her confident footsteps echoed through the silent courtroom. She calmly approached the judge and said, "Your Honor, I am attorney Ava Carter, and I request permission to submit newly discovered evidence that changes this entire case." Every face turned toward her. Victor Langford's confident smile disappeared instantly, because the person he believed had vanished forever had just arrived, carrying the one document he had spent years trying to keep hidden. The courtroom remained silent as Ava placed the aged portfolio on the evidence table. Without raising her voice, she removed the original founder's trust agreement, a document created years before Carter Freight Solutions had ever become a billion-dollar company. As the judge examined the original signatures and official seals, Ava carefully explained its true purpose. "The trust was never created to enrich me," she said. "It was established to protect this company from anyone attempting to seize control through deception." The atmosphere changed instantly. Every accusation that Victor's legal team had built suddenly began to crumble. But Ava wasn't finished. She presented annual renewal records proving the trust had remained legally valid every single year. Then she called Ethan's longtime legal secretary to the witness stand. Under oath, the secretary revealed that every trust filing had been properly reported, but Victor Langford had secretly hidden those records from the rest of the board. A wave of shock swept through the courtroom. Before anyone could recover, Ava introduced another piece of evidence: encrypted emails exchanged between Victor Langford and Catherine Blackwell. The messages exposed their real plan. They intended to destroy Ethan's reputation, freeze his voting rights, and purchase Carter Freight Solutions for nearly 40% below its actual value before selling its assets for enormous profits. Victor's attorney immediately claimed the emails had been fabricated. Ava calmly produced an independent digital forensic report confirming every message was authentic. Then she revealed one final surprise. A recorded conversation proved Catherine's representatives had secretly offered Ava a prestigious legal partnership and millions of dollars, not to lie, but simply to stay away from court. At that moment, everyone understood the truth. The conspiracy had never depended on Ava betraying her father. It had depended on her Judge Rebecca Morgan carefully reviewed every document before delivering her decision. The courtroom was so quiet that even the sound of turning pages echoed through the chamber. After several tense minutes, she looked directly at Victor Langford. "The evidence presented today establishes sufficient grounds to reject the claims against Mr. Ethan Carter and begin a criminal investigation into the attempted corporate takeover." Her gavel struck the bench. The order to remove Ethan from control of his company was immediately canceled. Victor Langford was suspended from the board pending investigation, while Catherine Blackwell was ordered to remain available for questioning over allegations of fraud, witness tampering, and corporate conspiracy. For a brief second, no one spoke. Then the courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed outside to break the news. Employees who had feared losing everything embraced each other with relief. The company Ethan had spent 15 years building had been saved. Outside the courtroom, Ethan finally stood face to face with Ava. He looked at her quietly before saying, "For a while, I thought I'd lost you." Ava smiled gently. "You once told me that when someone blocks the front door, you don't give up. You find another way inside. I was only following the lesson you taught me." Weeks later, Carter Freight Solutions introduced a new leadership structure focused on honesty and transparency. Victor and Catherine faced multiple investigations, while Ava accepted the role of the company's chief legal advisor, not because she was family, but because she had earned it. One peaceful morning, as trucks rolled out of the harbor, Ava handed Ethan the same old brass house key he had given her years ago. "You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go," she said softly. "Today, I'm simply returning the key to the future you built." Ethan closed his hand around the worn key and smiled. In the end, the greatest thing he had ever built was